from US 90 to Lakeland Highlands Road, ultimately up to Glendale Street, connecting with the Three Parks Trail, Lake Collingsworth, and into downtown Lakeland. We'll get into some additional discussion about that as part of our zoning conversation. But essentially, the site from a bicycle pedestrian standpoint is well positioned to serve folks getting to and from this area on bike or on foot. That's pretty much sums up at the land use level the transportation issues related to this proposal. And I'll stand for any questions on that.
Questions from the board members? Noted.
All right, Madam Chair, I guess you want to move over to the PUD portion of the discussion?
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Knight, raise your hand.
I did. I just had a quick question. Is there, because you spoke to meeting all the road requirements, is there a light at Deerfield Drive and Lakeland Highlands Road?
That's an excellent question, and actually is one of the main mitigation requirements that is included in the zoning ordinance, is to ensure that there's a signal is in place at the Deerfield Lakeland Highlands intersection prior to, I believe it's the first certificate of occupancy. So that has been really one of the forefront issues that we've been working to address as this project and others in this area move forward. And so that's a very timely question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Anyone else? Okay. Let's continue on, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Philip Scarce with Community and Economic Development. Before I get too far in my presentation, I just wanted to make sure you had a copy of the revised conditions that we emailed to you yesterday. So I'm going to be referring to those a lot, excuse me, in my presentation this morning. And what these are, it's an underlined strike-through version of the comparison of what was originally proposed last month. I know we didn't have the hearing, but it was still in your packet, versus what we've worked through with the applicant and what we have and we'll be presenting before you and ultimately going to the City Commission. But with that, I'm going to start and again, and then I'm going to run you through the first half of the conditions, and then Mr. Barmby will take you through the second half of the transportation concerns and issues. So Kathy Hadaway of Pugliose and Bennett, on behalf of the applicant Orlando Health, is requesting a PUD concurrent with a city-initiated request as well. We are applying a suburban special purpose context district to this site, which is a 79.6 acre site located in south of State Road 570 Polk Parkway and east of Lakeland Highlands Road, north of Winter Lake Road extension. The proposed PUD includes the following uses: 730,000 square foot hospital with up to 360 beds, a 30,000 square foot freestanding emergency room, 20,000 square foot ambulatory surgical center, 240,000 square foot of medical office uses, 150 room hotel, and 20,000 square feet of retail uses. As Mr. Lyons mentioned, the subject property is currently within Polk County and is designated as RL1 future land use. Next slide, please, Christelle. This, I'm just going to leave this up for a minute. This is the previous slide that came before you at the public hearing in February. And at that hearing, there was substantial concern, not only from staff and yourself, and also nearby residents located across to the west within the Waterview and Meadows subdivisions. The residents concerned primarily related to increases of traffic, noise, building height. At that time, it was 150 feet for the hospital. Secondary concerns were related to the project's proximity to nearby schools and whether there was actually a need for additional healthcare facilities in the city of Lakeland. Based on the initial public and comment, staff and the applicant worked together to create a PUD site plan that with conditions that address not only staff concerns, but most importantly, the residents' concern in the immediate area. And as you may recall, staff had some concerns about this staff report lacking a little bit of detail. So next slide, please, Christelle. The new PUD site plan that comes before you today that's for consideration is broken into 5 distinct development districts, and I'm going to go over each one, and those are outlined in the conditions as well. Briefly, Tract A is a hospital center, which, and I superimposed the building, the heights you see here, 120, 90, 30, 60, and 60. I just superimposed those for the slideshow purposes. They're not on the this site plan, but they are on the conditions. So I just want to point that out to you. Tract B, which is medical support offices. Tract C is a hospital support zone. Tract D, which is commercial support uses, and Tract E, which is the conservation future medical campus. And that Tract E is particular concern because that's the tract that when development occurs will probably have the most impacts to the adjacent residents and the subdivisions across Lakeland Highlands Road. But as you can see within Tract A, the maximum height is 120 feet. Their initial proposal was 150 feet. Within Tracts B and C, the maximum height is 90 feet. Within Tract D, the commercial uses are limited to 36 feet in height, plus 60 feet for a hotel. And along Tract E, the maximum height is 60 feet. I'm just going to leave that slide up for a minute. I apologize. Get my stuff. Now I'm specifically referring to the conditions now. In Tract A, the proposed uses are listed there. Again, the maximum height in Tract A is 120 feet. This includes the hospital, freestanding emergency room, helicopter pad, office uses, medical, ambulatory surgical center, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, rehabilitation facilities, skilled nursing facility, structured parking, and a central energy plant. Within Tract B, that tract that runs along the Winter Lake Road extension, proposed uses include office and medical, ambulatory surgical center, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, rehabilitation facilities, skilled nursing facilities. Tract B will allow some commercial uses as well. Will allow commercial retail and restaurant and also general office uses, as well as a hotel. Tract C, the easternmost tract there, the permitted uses are hospital, office support medical uses, structured parking, and also a central energy plant, and any other ancillary related uses associated with the hospital operations. And in Tract D, I think this is the biggest substantive change from the last set of conditions. Previously, we had one restaurant there. The applicant was requesting 2. So I'm going to read the condition as it's stated now. A maximum of 2 high turnover restaurants shall be permitted. Of the 2 restaurants, no more than 1 shall have drive-through facilities. The restaurant with the drive-through shall be limited to a fast casual type restaurant with no more than 1 drive-through lane, and service hours limited to the time period between 6 and 10 p.m. Quick service type restaurants, including but not limited to McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, Chick-fil-A, shall not be permitted. So in essence, no fast food restaurants there. Non-restaurant uses with drive-through facilities shall be permitted, such as pharmacies, but shall be limited to no more than one drive-through lane and service hours limited to 6 and 12 a.m. midnight. And importantly, a condition has been added as well. Retail development within Tract D shall not commence until the first building permit is issued for development within Tract A. And then in Tract E, the portion along Lakeland Highlands Road, the proposed uses are office uses, medical, ambulatory surgical center, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, rehabilitation facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and office uses non-medical. And I did want to note that the condition last on Tract E, any future development within Tract E, and I wanted to add except for construction of stormwater, sidewalks, and related landscape and infrastructure improvements shall be subject to a major modification. So what this is saying is that any development prior to Tract E, any development will need to have a major modification to this PUD before any development occur, except for sidewalks, stormwater facilities, landscaping, and any related infrastructure to those, stormwater and sidewalk facilities. So I just wanted to point that out. That was a change that's not reflected in your conditions. Condition number 4 is maximum intensity of use. So this is getting into the hospital and all the uses as far as the maximum square footage. I went through these briefly, but the hospital is 360 beds, 730,000 square feet, a freestanding emergency room, which is in their phase 1 portion of development, which is 30,000 square feet, medical office uses, 240,000 square feet, ambulatory surgical center, which is 20,000 square feet, a hotel is 150 rooms, and supporting retail uses is 20,000 square feet. Condition number 5, development standards. Tracts A, B, C, and E, in accordance with the suburban special purpose, minimum perimeter setbacks is 50 feet for the entire site. Maximum building heights, as I mentioned before, in Tract A, 120, Tract B and C, 90, Tract E is 60. Tract D, which is the commercial tract at the corner of Lakeland Highlands Road and Winter Lake Road Extension, is, find my place here, I apologize. Maximum building height is 60 feet for the hotel and 36 feet for all of the buildings. So any commercial uses except for the hotel would be 36 feet. And again, no more than 2 high turnover restaurants shall be permitted within the overall planned development itself. Number 6, the tract development plan. The development shall be developed in substantial accordance with the with this development plan that you see before you, as that is being the adopted site plan within the PUD. And then, Christelle, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. This is their permitted use matrix that tells you what the permitted uses are for in each tract. And the next slide, and then this addresses condition number 7, which is signage. The applicant has a signage plan that will also be adopted within the PUD. The signage shall be in accordance with Article 4 of the Land Development Code, except otherwise permitted in a comprehensive plan as attachments D and E. So there's a site plan that shows where the signs are located as well within the PUD, plus this specific sign plan that will accompany the PUD and its adoption. And I am going to turn it over to Chuck to talk with you about the transportation conditions, starting with condition 8. Thank you very much.
For the record, Chuck Barbie, City Community and Economic Development Department. Before I begin, I just want to lay out a couple of things just to establish the basis of the conditions that I'll be discussing. The first is that the site is located within the urban development area, is defined in the city's comprehensive plan, and is located immediately adjacent to the Central City Transit Supportive Area, which is also identified in the comprehensive plan. Those are all subject to specific level of service standards that are found in policy 4A.1 of the comprehensive plan. And most of the multimodal, the bicycle, the pedestrian, the transit mitigation measures that we'll be getting into today are addressed in Article 10 of the Land Development Code. So that really forms the basis of the development of the conditions on this project. The other thing I wanted to explain is that for transportation concurrency purposes, there are really two things that we look for to determine a project's impact and what they're required to mitigate for. And we look at it as called significance and adversity. For significance, we look at the impact area of which the project consumes 5% of the directional daily capacity of a particular roadway or series of roadway segments within an impact area. So if a project consumes 5% of the capacity of the road, it is within the impact area and undergoes additional scrutiny for mitigation purposes. Adversity, whether a project is adverse on a roadway segment, does the project cause a roadway segment or intersection to fail? Does it cause it to not operate acceptably according to the comprehensive plan? So those are the two key principles that we look at when we develop transportation conditions. Going back to what I discussed under the land use conversation, this proposed use generates at build out approximately 12,616 daily trips based on the applicant's traffic study. That's in addition to what would have been generated under the previous or the current county zoning category, which is RL1. So we're looking at a project that is going to generate a substantial amount of traffic prior to build out, which was assumed right around the year 2040. So this is a very unusual project because of the scale of the project, as well as the build out timeline between now and when that development program would be fully realized. So during that time, you've got project traffic and you've also got background traffic from other development and other just kind of natural population growth occurring within Lakeland and Polk County. So there's a balancing act to make sure that the developer is only responsible for the impacts that it's creating on the transportation system, and that we also understand kind of what's happening in terms of overall background growth in the area. So jumping into some of the deficiencies that were identified in the traffic study, the first one, and I think Commissioner Knight, you touched on this, was the need to signalize the Deerfield Lakeland Highlands Road intersection, and so we'll address that in the conditions. The other is the need to extend the northbound left turn lane from Lakeland Highlands Road onto the westbound ramps at the Polk Parkway. We'll also be addressing that as well. Because of the trip generation associated with this project, we looked and we're looking in more detail at impacts on Edgewood Drive, west of Lakeland Highlands Road, New Jersey Road, which are both constrained facilities, constrained roadways in our comprehensive plan. We can't widen them beyond 2 lanes. And so we're having to look at other ways to move people in and around the site. US 98, Bartow Road from Edgewood Drive to Main Street is undergoing some design analysis by the Department of Transportation to look at what portions they can actually widen from 4 to 6 lanes and whether the operational improvements are going to be needed to serve current and future traffic demand in that corridor. And so as you start to move north from the site, the roadway system is really a series of 2-lane roads and 4-lane roads that are in different levels of congestion. And so we wanted to be sensitive to that as we develop the conditions we discussed today. In terms of multimodal transportation, and this is what a lot of our conditions are centered around, I mentioned earlier that the Citrus Connection does not operate a transit service to this area. And so we've been working with them to develop a program that would allow bus service to the Orlando Health Campus in the future. And so we believe that we've done that in a very good fashion. Again, the site is within the corridor of the alternate alignment for the Fort Fraser Trail Extension that the Department of Transportation has now allocated $2 million in its 5-year budget to construct in 2024. And so we've been working with the county to make sure that the zoning conditions reflect the status of the project as it stands today, and make sure that we don't end up with a funding shortfall on this site that could create an obstacle for us going down the road. So with that, I'll jump in section 8. The first condition is the requirement for a development agreement that will lock down the specific transportation concurrency conditions that come out of this zoning action. It's very similar to what we did with the Riverstone residential community in Southwest Lakeland and Lakeland Park Center, the Dick's Sporting Goods Shopping Center up in North Lakeland about 10 years ago. And so there will be a development agreement forthcoming that will go straight to the City Commission for 2 hearings in the near future. In terms of access management, the site on Lakeland Highlands Road will be restricted to a right-in, right-out, left-in driveway. So you'll be able to make a right-in off of Lakeland Highlands. You'll be able to make a right-out onto Lakeland Highlands, and a left-in if you're coming from the Polk Parkway into the site. We revised this condition from last month to state that the driveway shall be constructed either prior to the first certificate of occupancy for Tract A or prior to the project exceeding a cumulative trip generation intensity of 721 PM peak hour external trips. It must be designed with a bicycle keyhole lane between the northbound through and right turn lane. The 721 trip threshold is important because that's the point at which this development program would be both significant and adverse on Edgewood Drive west of the Parkway. So from a phasing standpoint, it's basically at what point is a project posing an issue to Edgewood Drive? And so really most of the off-site transportation conditions are based in that second phase, from that 721 PM peak hour trip threshold to full build out. So we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. In terms of driveways on the Winter Lake Road extension, the site will include 3 access points at 800 feet, 1,400 feet, and 1,700 feet east of the Lakeland Highlands intersection. All driveway throat lengths shall comply with the Land Development Code access management standards, and those are included in Article 4 of the Land Development Code. C gets into the point that was raised earlier about the Deerfield Winter Lake Road intersection at Lakeland Highlands. Prior to the first certificate of occupancy, the Lakeland Highlands Winter Lake Road Deerfield intersection shall be signalized, subject to approval by Polk County, and with appropriate turn lane modifications on both roads to accommodate the project traffic through build out. The developer may share the cost of this signalization with nearby development activity. We've got some development proposals on the west side of Lakeland Highlands Road that will also be, or at least at this point, participating, will be coming forward and participating in the cost of that signal. We're having discussions with them as well as recently as last week. And so we're going to put a plan together that will likely be addressed in the development agreement to address that specific condition. Jumping down to D, prior to the first certificate of occupancy, the northbound left turn lane on Lakeland Highlands at the Polk Parkway shall be extended to a 600-foot length as documented in the traffic study to meet the 95th percentile key demand at this location. And this is really to address issues with traffic spilling over into the through lane on Lakeland Highlands Road. So I think those are 2 really significant key improvements that are being made near the project site early on in the development program. In terms of jumping down to E and multimodal mitigation, bicycle, pedestrian, and transit type mitigation options and requirements. The first one is that prior to the first certificate of occupancy or CO, the developer shall dedicate a 40-foot wide easement within the project area to accommodate the Fort Fraser Trail extension. And that's just to tie in with the work that the county has done to connect the trail from 98 over to Lakeland Highlands Road. Number two is, and if I'll beg your indulgence, I will read this condition because it represents a substantial change that was made since last month. It gets into a lot of the detail as to how the construction would be addressed as part of this project. If in fiscal year 2024 it's determined that a funding shortfall is demonstrated by the Florida DOT, Polk County, or the City of Lakeland, then at such time as the developer submits a site plan, which would trigger the project to exceed a cumulative trip generation intensity of 721 PM peak hour trips, external cumulative trip generation, then the developer shall only be responsible for its proportionate share of constructing the Fort Fraser Trail extension within the subject project boundaries, which amount shall not exceed $300,000. So the developer is bringing some funding to the table to address any shortfall that could be identified by 2024. That's the year in which funding is already programmed in the state work program. The developer shall not be responsible for any off-site portion of the trail. In the event that the Fort Fraser Trail Extension Program is terminated, then the developer shall have no responsibility for any construction of the trail on site. If there are sufficient funds available from the Florida DOT, City of Lakeland, or Polk County to cover the cost of the trail extension, such funds shall be utilized to pay for the construction of the trail on the subject property. The developer shall establish connections into the campus that will allow it to be integrated with the required internal pedestrian network. Construction of this trail segment will satisfy one multimodal transportation mitigation requirement for the project. So that was quite a mouthful, but it really gets into, again, the project addressing its proportionate impacts related to a funding shortfall for the Fort Fraser Trail extension. Jumping down into transit capital and services. This is another one where we've had a lot of discussion over the past few weeks and are at a good point where I think everybody is in agreement that we've got good conditions to support future transit service. Really, the intent of this is that prior to the first site plan submittal, the location and layout of an on-site transit super stop shall be approved by the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. And the super stop would be a facility where you would have 2 buses, 2 transit shelters, waiting area, underground electric infrastructure, other things to support increased bus service that would serve this major activity center. It'd be very similar to what you see today at Lakeside Village on the south side and at Lakeland Park Center on the north side. And so this is important capital that the Citrus Connection will need to be able to operate service to this site in the future. The final siting and the design of the super stop shall not require an amendment to this development condition. So we also want to be clear that as we look for a specific location on this development site, that is not going to by itself trigger a modification to the PUD ordinance. And so we wanted to make that clear. Prior to the project exceeding a cumulative trip generation intensity of 721 PM peak hour external trips, the sum of up to, but not to exceed, $500,000 of transportation impact fees will be paid by the developer and shall be allocated by the city toward the purchase of a bus to support peak hour transit service to the subject property. Again, with the transit district not operating a transit route to the site, they need to have a bus to provide that type of service. And through this condition, a funding program is being put into place to support the purchase of that bus to serve future transit service. The developer shall only be required to pay the actual cost of the bus procurement necessary to serve the project, and then the cost of satisfying this condition shall be impact fee creditable to the developer. So this, because it's capital, would be eligible for transportation impact fee credits. Upon delivery of the bus, the developer shall provide funding for the operations of peak hour transit service to the property. This condition will require a 5-year funding commitment of $150,000 per year. And that's based on future expected operating costs by the Citrus Connection, based on fuel, insurance, and other things that they foresee looking down the road to support the cost of operating a bus route to the site. The payments are going to be contingent upon the purchase of the bus, the establishment of regular operations by Lakeland Area Mass Transit District for peak hour service, Monday through Friday, morning and evening peak periods, at least 6 hours per weekday, and that the transit route and serve the site in its entirety for the entire 5-year term of the payments. The schedule, final down payments, those details will be hammered out through a separate agreement with the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. Now, once we start getting into what we would call the second phase of the project, when we start to exceed 721 PM peak hour trips, then the developer shall submit a new traffic analysis with new or updated concurrency mitigation requirements that being identified. The focus of this updated analysis will be limited to those segments where the project is significant and exceeding 5% of the capacity of the roadway, and will address in more detail the New Jersey Road corridor from Edgewood Drive to Bartow Road and the New Jersey Road Edgewood Drive intersection. So we want to look at in more detail when the project gets to the point where it is significant on that road corridor and at that intersection. And the cost of satisfying any mitigation identified in analysis will be impact fee creditable by the to the developer. Prior to the project exceeding 721 PM peak hour trips, any office or public institutional building on the property shall comply with our transportation demand management requirements in the Land Development Code. Those get into issues related to showers for employees, dedicated parking space for van pool and carpool participants, and other things laid out in the Land Development Code specifically. And I promise we're almost at the end. Prior to the first site plan submittal, the developer will be providing us with a concurrency tracking database so that we can keep track of the trip generation from the project at each stage in its evolution, and that we're able to update our concurrency management system using that information. All permitting for Lakeland Highlands and Winter Lake Road will be required to be permitted through Polk County as operators of both roads. When the Lakeland Highlands Road driveway is constructed, the sidewalk shall be constructed along the Lakeland Highlands Road frontage. One thing that we've done to offset the impacts of addressing the funding shortfall for the Fort Fraser extension is limiting the amount of sidewalk that has to be built along the Winter Lake Road extension frontage. And so on that language, it's been modified to say that when the westernmost driveway connection is made to the Winter Lake Road extension, the sidewalk shall be constructed to that driveway along the Winter Lake Road extension frontage. So it's just to the first driveway east of Lakeland Highlands Road. F3, we have a requirement to have a pedestrian plan developed and reviewed for the overall site. It also addresses cross access with out parcels and adjacent parcels within the development site. And all parking, bike parking shall comply with the Land Development Code. And of course, all access management requirements of both Polk County and the Lakeland Land Development Code shall be met. So with that, I know that was lengthy. I will stand for any questions on the transportation aspect of the proposal.
I see Ms. Knight's hand, right?
Transportation.
Ms.
Ms.
Knight,
Knight.
always raised.
What is that?
When you will look at the impact on New Jersey Road and Edgewood, will you also be looking at the impact that the Glendale artery has? Because sometimes people use that as an alternate from New Jersey Road to Lakeland Highlands Road. Will that be included?
We specifically talked about that as well as really perhaps a potential mitigation. I mean, this is looking down a few years down the road, but that, I'm just throwing this out, but if you were to signalize the Glendale Lakeland Highlands intersection, that may help make things a little bit better for Edgewood, New Jersey, because it takes the right turns and moves them to another corridor. But that's something that would be looked at in the future phase.
I see, like, because of the residents that live on that artery would probably, I would imagine, be not happy with the increased traffic. So that would call for maybe speed bumps or something of that nature. The other question I had was, you mentioned in one of the artery that when you're going north on Lakeland Highlands Road to turn left onto the Parkway, it would be increased to 600 feet. Can you tell me how long it is presently?
I believe right now it's in the 300-foot range.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you.
So it's a fairly substantial extension.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I see Mr. Phillipson's hand.
Chuck,
Yes,
just a
Mr.
quick
Phillipson?
question. You're talking about the 5-year plan and the expenditures that would be absorbed by the developer. Is that contingent? I know, of course, they're going to be building this, and the hospital itself seems to be many years away as far as when that's finally constructed, which will cause a lot of the traffic to be there. So will their expenditures be that $150,000 a year? That's no matter where they stand in the overall project. Is that correct? Or will that be determined depending on what the traffic situation is, what the bus situation is, and so forth?
That will be after they get into the 721 PM peak external trips. So that would be in phase B. That's when those dollars would start to be expended. And that's also subject to the purchase of the bus. So that's really geared towards when the more substantial traffic impact generators are going to be on site, the hospital and a large portion of the medical office.
Thank you.
Someone else? Is there anyone else?
Madam Chair, if there's no more questions, I'll just wrap my presentation up and we can hand it over to the applicant. I know they're on the line as well, if you don't mind.
Okay, one other thing there, Philip, before you
Yes, ma'am.
proceed on. Under 4.2 on the handout, item number A, first page, let's change that to Orlando. It's Health and Wellness Campus.
Okay.
Okay. And I had one question before, in summary. Why was the pharmacy portion taken out of A and B? Watson Clinic has a small pharmacist. Some other hospitals have a small pharmacist within them.
Right. We were, those were, initially they were included in there. We were using another hospital's conditions to go by. What we're using now for the base of the uses are the applicant's matrix table that is in the next slide. So we're going strictly by that. That's all.
Okay. Okay. And on the hotel at Lakeside Village, was that a 60-foot cap or 55?
I do not know. Matt, do you know?
Just trying to keep for consistency.
You're referring to the Home 2 suites over there next to the Bill for Them? I think that was only like 3 or 4 stories. I don't think it was 60 feet. It was maybe a little bit less.
Okay. Just making sure that we're kind of compatible. All right. That's it. Anyone else? Continue on, Philip, please.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to wrap up this portion with the staff recommendation. The Community and Economic Development Department reviewed this request and recommends approval of the proposed PUD, as well as the application of suburban special purpose context districts. Letters of notification were sent to 63 property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. Staff received 3 calls and 1 email in opposition at the public hearing in February. 1 person spoke in favor of the request, while 6 were opposed to the request based on the objections previously noted. And I'll just leave it at that. Staff, we've addressed the residents' concerns with the conditions in this proposed site plan. That's all I have, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
and before you vote, I just want to remind you, because this is a large-scale and use and annexation with a separate zoning action, will need to vote on the land use and annexation separately from the zoning. So it'll be two separate votes. Land use will be first.
Okay, thank you. First vote for the annexation. May I have a motion
The land use.
and a second?
Second.
Okay. And we shall have a roll call.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Assistant City Attorney Jared Simpson. I think that we need a clarification that the vote was for the use first.
Yes. Vote is for the use. And it was moved and second. So through roll call, Mr. Roberts,
Aye.
Mr. Phillipson,
Aye.
Ms. Lunt? Aye. Mr. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Franklin, aye. Okay. That's on you. Yes?
Brandy has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see, hi. I didn't see who moved or second.
I did, Brandy. File.
Oh, it's Mr. Phillipson?
Yes.
Yes. Made the motion and the second came from whose voice?
No, mine was the second. I don't know who made the
Okay.
motion. I think Brandy was asking about the second.
Okay.
I think that was when Matt made the comment about the land use instead. I think that's what we heard, Matt saying that it should be the land use instead of the annexation. So nobody actually moved. It was Mr. Phillipson seconding. I didn't hear anybody move.
I'm sorry.
Okay, then I'll make the motion if somebody wants to second.
That'll be
Second.
fine, please. The motion from Mr. Phillipson was for the land use.
Second.
And the second is whose voice?
I second.
I heard Higgins first.
Perfect.
Perfect. We have Mr. Phillipson and Mr. Higgins on that motion.
Okay.
First and second, okay? And the second motion,
So moved.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and second. All those in favor? Or I'm on roll call, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
What is the
Madam Chair,
motion?
we have Mike Mustard raising his hand.
Jonathan, don't you have some phone calls that wanted to call in on this item?
We have representatives from the applicant.
Oh, that's all from the applicant? Okay, just checking.
Yeah,
Well, this is not a public
Madam Chair,
hearing.
please,
it's not public,
Right. Right. My apologies, Madam Chair. Please continue.
no problem. Okay, so it was moved and second. Did you get who those were, Brandy? Okay, great. Mr. Roberts?
Aye.
Mr. Phillipson?
Aye.
Ms. Lyons? Aye. Mr. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
And I, Stephanie Franklin, aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, now. With that, we will go to item number 8.
Item 8, changes zoning from C2 highway commercial to planned unit development zoning concurrent with the city-initiated request to change the context district from suburban corridor to suburban neighborhood to allow 264 multifamily dwelling units on approximately 19.89 acres, generally located north of Interstate 4, west of Kathleen Road. The owner is Interchange Group LLC, applicant Continental Properties Incorporated. Also, they have requested a 3-month continuous due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I so move we delay this.
Second.
It was moved and second
Yes.
that we delay this for 3 months. Mr. Roberts?
Aye.
Mr. Phillipson?
Aye.
Ms. Luntz? Aye. Mr. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
And I, Stephanie Franklin.
Madam Chair, excuse me.
Yes.
Chuck raised his hand earlier. I must have missed it. Chuck, would you like to speak on something? Please unmute your mic, Chuck.
That question was answered.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that.
No problem. We're doing good. Item number 9, please.
Item 9, plat approval for Interstate Commerce Park Phase 2 on 75.38 acres, generally located south of South Frontage Road, west of North Gallery Road, and east of Craft Road. Owners, the Interstate Commerce Park 4678 LLC, applicant Stitzel Engineering Company and Construction Incorporated.
Good morning again, Joshua Cheney with Community Economic Development, Stitchell Engineering and Construction Incorporated on behalf of Interstate Commerce Park 4 LLC, Interstate Commerce Park 6 LLC, Interstate Commerce Park 7 LLC, and Interstate Commerce Park 8 LLC has submitted a subdivision plat for Interstate Commerce Park Phase 2. The proposed plat consists of 5 lots on approximately 75.38 acres, generally located south of South Frontage Road, west of North Galloway Road, and east of Craft Road. Plats are reviewed by the city's subdivision review team for compliance with Article 9, which are our subdivision standards located within our land development code. And accordingly, it is recommended by staff that the Planning and Zoning Board approve the plat as conforming to Article 9 of the Land Development Code. And with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, Matt? Motion to approve the plat?
So moved.
Second.
May I have a second? May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Aye.
Mr. Phillipson?
Aye.
Ms. Luntz? Aye. Mr. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
And I, Stephanie Franklin. Item number 10, please.
Item 10, Green Swamp Area of Critical State Concern Site Plan approval for Phase 1 consisting of a 1,011,697 square foot warehouse facility located at 8565 North Road 33, north of Interstate 4, south and east of North State Route 30, Road 34, and south of Mount Olive Road. The owner is Ruthven I4 LLC, applicants Gulf Coast Consulting.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Again, for the record, Philip Scarce with Community and Economic Development. Sean Cashin, on behalf of Rupin I4 LLC, request site plan approval for the Cine State Logistics Park East Phase 1, property located on I4, south and east of south of State Road 33 and south of Mount Olive Road. It's within the Green Swamp area of critical state concern. The subject property is approximately 166 acres in the area that has a future land use designation of Business Park Center X and zoning classification of PUD as specified by Ordinance 4903. PUD 4903 was initially adopted by the City Commission in September of 2007 and was subsequently modified in 2019 by this board to allow change uses to 1.4 million square feet of warehouse uses and 76,200 square feet of office uses. As shown in attachment B of your staff report, and you can go to the next slide, Christelle, thank you. Phase 1 of this project consists of a 1,011,690 square foot distribution warehouse and associated site infrastructure, including the main spine road and stormwater master facilities. Because this is again, I mentioned this is within the Green Swamp. It's an area designated by the state. It's critical in its fact that it's the headwaters for the state's major rivers, including the Withlacoochee, Ocklawaha, Hillsborough, and Peace Rivers, and is also a major replenishing source for the Florida aquifer system. And as a result of the special environmental features, the development of the Green Swamp must adhere to special guidelines which address the key issues of state concerns. These guidelines are found in our article, section 6.3 of Article 6 of the Land Development Code, which prohibits certain land uses, floodplain and wetland protection provisions, and their requirement to conduct a land survey to properly identify endangered or threatened species on site. We have sent this site plan previously to the community, to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, FDEO, and they have asked the applicant to, they've made some preliminary comments and asked the applicant to provide narrative that's consistent with policy X17 in the city's comprehensive plan, and whether or not the proposed site plan is compliant with the requirement of minimum 10% open space. The applicant has addressed these concerns with DEO, and it's currently being reviewed right now by DEO. This case will not move forward until staff gets approval from DEO. And then once the appeal period is gone through, we will approve the site plan. But right now, what you're doing is you're submitting this for formal review by DEO. And with that, I will turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Sean Cashin.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Sean Cashin, you've been unmuted. Please state your name and address before addressing the board.
Sean Cashin, Gulf Coast Consulting, 13825 ICOP Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida. I'm representing the owner of this property and the applicant. I don't have too much more to add than what Philip had stated. I will say that we have gone through the review process with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and we have received an ERP permit, and that was probably close to a month ago. We are going through the permitting process for both access and drainage with the DOT, and that is ongoing. As Philip had mentioned, there were some preliminary comments from the DEO regarding the criteria that's in the area of critical state concern and meeting that criteria. We have responded to those comments from DEO, and they have that response letter that they are reviewing. So I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions from any board member? None noted. Thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. No questions from the board members. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay.
Did we have a question?
No, I just need to recuse on this project.
That's Ms. Lyons? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Again, it's Assistant City Attorney Jared Simpson, and I just, a couple of things. One, can I get clarification that the motion was for approval? And as for the recusal of Ms. Lunds, if you could just quickly state the basis for the recusal. Thanks.
The Ruthvens is a client of mine.
Okay.
And I'll restate to move to accept as presented.
Okay, thank you. And a second once again, please.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Aye.
Mr. Phillipson?
Aye.
Mr. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Ms. Knight?
Aye.
And I, Stephanie Franklin. One recusal, Ms. Lyons. Thank you very much. Thank you, Attorney Jarrett. Reports from the City Commission. We made it, team.
Almost to the end.
Almost to the end. All right.
So on the items that the City Commission took action on that you had previously recommended for approval are the self-storage facility located at Lakeland Highlands Road that had a second reading on March 16th, and first reading for the change in zoning for the Grand Villa assisted living and memory care unit up on Lakeland Hills Boulevard had first reading on April the 6th and actually was just approved at yesterday's City Commission meeting.
Okay.
Moving on to new cases. So we have a couple of cases that have been continued previously that we anticipate will be coming before you at your meeting in May. New applications include one for a conditional use for the Greater Refuge Sanctuary, and this would be for an addition to their existing church campus at 1258 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. And I mentioned the cases that may be coming back. One of those would be the industrial use located on South Edgewood Drive that was seeking a change in zoning from O1 to I1. They will now be coming forward with a planned unit development in order to address some of the concerns by adjoining property owners. And that concludes my report.
Anyone from the board for anything else to add?
Stephanie.
Mr. Phillipson?
Yeah, before we conclude, I would just like to make a comment and a thank you to Jonathan and Brandy and the entire staff. They brought us through this meeting that had all kinds of moving parts with minimal technical difficulties, and I think they did just a great job both pre and during. I want to thank them all.
You're here.
They're here.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you.
You all did a marvelous job. Okay? As I told you before, hey, have a good night's sleep because I got your back. Peace be still. And we did fabulous, okay? Fabulous. So thank you everyone, all those who participated. I appreciate it. Andrew, I miss having you not next to me. I really do.
I agree. Next month.
I tell you. And Jared, it's wonderful to have you in with us. Thank you. This was your first meeting with us.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much. And we'll see each other again. Okay. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor, everyone can say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, we have Roberts, Phillipson, Lunt, Higgins, Snyder, Knight, and Franklin, so that we are on the record. Thank you very much and have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.